What's up, everyone? Normal America Show, Rob Noerr. Again, I want to change the name of the show and just have it be the Rob Noerr Show. I honestly forgot how I made my little overlay there. So, I'm doing a show tonight that I did not want to do for various reasons, so we'll talk about it. I'm starting early because things just broke that way for me at work here. So I was able to start a little early, though I am still texting my wife. Does anyone have toddlers, kids, etc.? Sometimes things are a mystery. So my son's 3, and he'll say he wants to watch a show. So what he told my wife here like 10 minutes ago, he wants to watch the show with the 2 guys that like those chickens. It's like you have to be like Sherlock Holmes trying to decipher, like, what the hell does that mean? The guys that like those chickens. Give my kid a tiny Tim Pool beanie. Will do. So I'm going to do a show tonight that I didn't want to do for 2 reasons, right? And it's going to take a while to get into it, but I'm going to take, hopefully, a plethora of calls. Now, the worst case scenario tonight will be that no one basically calls in, because the only reason I'm doing this show is because there was enough criticism of me in the comments of the episode I did with Timcast IRL and on Twitter that I thought that I would give people a shot to say exactly what they wanted, because I was being accused of being a coward. And I might be stupid, I might be a shill, but I'm not a grifter and I'm not a coward. So we'll take the call-ins. As long as they're within terms of service, people can say whatever they want to me. I'll give my heartfelt responses to those calls. So we'll see. The worst case scenario will be those people didn't call in, because I really would have enjoyed talking about other things that were in the issue, more on this bloodbath comment. Now we see Joe Biden's official Twitter page that's out there spreading this garbage hoax. It's clearly a strategy that they're going to use. We were also going to talk about sort of people in Palestine being upset about the MREs that were dropped. And then probably most importantly, the Missouri case that's in front of the Supreme Court about First Amendment issues. And some of the terrible comments that we heard from some of the justices, particularly Jackson, who basically was decrying the fact that it seems like what the state's arguing is that the First Amendment would significantly hamper the government's right to censor you. Yes! Yes, you're right. That's exactly what it would do, which is the exact intended purpose. How are you a Supreme Court justice asking that question? Yes! That's exactly the point. Whew. So that's the sort of stuff I wanted to talk about today. Yeah, Drone Tech, I would love that. I would love to be able to do a debate. Thank you, Pistol Pete. I appreciate the subscription. Yeah, right, TQD. So that's what I wanted to talk about, but I saw a lot of pushback on my commentary. Sorry, just responding to someone. On my appearance on Tim Pool's show, and so I thought that I would give people this chance, and then tomorrow, that's it. So the 2 reasons I didn't want to do this show are, 1, I find it to be completely amateur hour for me to do one big show ever, and then the next 3 episodes of my show are, let's talk about that time I was on the big show. Now, obviously, the night of me doing Tim's show, I just did a thank you stream. It wasn't a normal stream at all. It was just saying thank you from the hotel. So that doesn't really count. And then yesterday, I sort of hit this issue because I saw people were talking about it. And then we talked about some other things. It was like half the episode yesterday. And I wanted to be done with it. Because I don't want to be, re-litigating one appearance. I mean, I stream 3, 4, 5 nights a week for 2-3 hours at a time. And now I'm going to be hamstrung into talking about one appearance that I've ever done. That just seems like amateur hour to me. The other reason is, for the exact same reason that those have been watched my show for a long time, is I'm sick and tired of the Israel-Palestine topic. I was sick and tired of it since October. I was sick and tired of it in 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, etc., etc. I'm tired of it. It is a conflict that I don't think either side is good. Right? Just to clear that up, right? I don't like either of the sides. I'm aware that there are intelligent people that are far more knowledgeable about both of these places, Israel and Palestine, who could make a passionate plea and case as to why their side is correct. And I know there are just as passionate people on the other side that could make that case as to why the other side is correct. I am someone who does not consider myself an expert on anything. I am someone who works 80-something hours a week. For a hobby, I like looking into political interest that I have and doing these streams. I think I'm very good at debating and articulating complex issues of the things I'm interested in, particularly corruption in our government, and explaining it to an audience in a way that I think is accessible to the people that I care about most in the world, which are blue-collar workers that don't have all day to sit around and research this stuff. However, my time is limited. I could go on a deep dive in history of the Spanish Civil War. I haven't. I could have gone on a deep dive in history on sort of the Holodomor. I haven't. I could have gone a deep dive in history in World War I. I haven't. And a litany of other topics. One of the topics I have not done a big deep dive on is the Israel-Palestinian conflict. I have done a deep dive on Russiagate. I have done a deep dive on the mid-year exam investigation into Hillary. I have done a deep dive into the Herr report. I have done a deep dive into many of the cases, legal cases around Donald Trump. Those things I've done. But apparently, none of that matters. To a large swath of people out there, only one issue matters, and that is Israel-Palestine. That is the central issue. And if you deviate from either side of that issue and agreeing with them 100%, even people that would normally agree with you, even people that might identify as populist or libertarian adjacent conservatives like me, if you deviate on this one issue, on either side, because some of those people, some populist, libertarian adjacent conservatives will say absolutely side with Israel 100%, and some in that same group will say absolutely side with Palestine 100%. But if you deviate from either of those positions, then you are a piece of shit shill who is to be taken with a degree of suspect, no matter what. That is the lesson. I'm tired of learning that lesson for years on this topic. One of the good friends of the show, who is more libertarian than me, he's actually a real libertarian unlike me, Casimir, is an ardent defender of sort of Israel's, I don't want to say Israel, is an ardent defender of the story not being as if we're told that Israel's the great evil and should give up all their land, etc., etc. Perhaps he'll call in later tonight if it's warranted. I think he's a very intelligent person who makes that case quite well. I also know people on the other side that are very intelligent and make the case of the war crimes of Israel and Israel's undue lobbying that has too much influence in our country. Tree of Liberty. We will talk about Tim Pool as well, and what I agree with Tim and what I disagree, both on the specific issue and stylistically. So we will talk once more. It'll be a little repetitive from the show last night, but I hope to give some people that want to get some things off their chest and tell me that I'm a Zionist or I'm a coward because I'm afraid to talk down to Tim Pool. I want to give them a chance to say that. So that's what tonight's show is about, unfortunately. But hopefully it'll be a fun show. As you can tell, I'm a little excitable, I guess. Now, the big comment that I think spurred a lot of people talking to me. That's right, King Barnduke. Was from someone, a name I know, David Icke. Now, David Icke I know from way back in the day. I'm talking 15 years ago, I think I heard of David Icke. Maybe even before that. Because back when I used to listen to like Coast to Coast and like old Alex Jones shows, David Icke was the dude I seem to remember, unless I'm screwing him up with someone else. He was big into like the alien conflict that's going on. So you have like these benevolent aliens, the 6-foot grays, and then these evil aliens, the reptilians. And we used to sort of joke about this, you know. And again, I'm entertained by that sort of stuff. I am. I don't literally believe it, but I don't see the harm. And as I say all the time, it's the official narrative. Thank you, Tigers. It's the official narrative of our government that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself while 2 guards fell asleep and 2 cameras malfunctioned. So I'm not going to begrudge anyone their conspiracy theory, even if you're flat Earth. I think that it's clearly a wrong theory, but that's okay. I'm not going to begrudge you talking about it. Doesn't mean I want to talk about it, or that I have strong arguments for or against, obviously. But I will read David Icke's post. He links to a 9-minute video, of which I probably speak 30 seconds in. And this is what he says. If the guy in the black bobble hat, that would be Tim Pool, was any more stupid, his body would forget to breathe. This is the new media, the MAM. And it's painful to watch this bloke and his baseball cap mate, that would be me with my baseball cap, put their stupendous ignorance on public display while claiming to be informed. MAM is also the DIAAC, Defend Israel at All Cost. That's David Icke's take. So I'm incredibly stupid while claiming to be informed. I responded to it, but I'll respond here. I believe David Icke apparently is pro-Palestine, I would guess. So I'll respond to David Icke here. I'll first start by saying this. When did I claim I was very informed on the subject? In fact, I think I was quite clear to say the opposite, is what I said. In fact, you might even say that I'm willfully uninformed. And you might say that's a bad thing, and that's fine. But the reason I'm willfully uninformed is the same reason that my neighbor that's a farmer is willfully uninformed. Want to know why that is? Because we have other things that concern us. That's why. Would you tell him, who doesn't stream, who doesn't really look into these things, that he's a terrible person for not jumping onto your bandwagon 100% because he's busy feeding his family and doing work? You might say, yes, but Rob, you look into other things, so it's clearly that you actually are looking into things. And I'm quite open. Those things that focus on most are domestic policy issues. When it comes to foreign policy, I know that these are complicated issues that require, that there's propaganda on all sides that require a deft hand to look into the history of them. But no matter what that history will be, as I illustrated on Tim Pool's show, my answer at the end of the day will be the same, which is whatever side is morally superior or morally inferior, whatever side is to blame or to be praised, whatever side has more influence or less influence, it is irrelevant to the policy prescription that I advocate for, which is stop sending them all money. But Rob, here is an articulate David Icke speech that goes for 27 hours that will outline why Israel has huge lobbying effects in the United States that must be fought against, and how they're the aggressors, and how they have stole this land, and how they're committing genocide. And I'll listen thoughtfully and at the end and say, wow, my position doesn't change. Stop sending them money. But Rob, here's another 20-hour articulate plea as to how actually David Icke's wrong, and Israel has the right to defend themselves, and they're the biggest advocate of democracy in the area, and they're a strategic ally of the United States that's very important, and actually their lobbying efforts are no different than a litany of other groups' lobbying efforts, and therefore they shouldn't be singled out, and we should support them. That sounds interesting. I'll listen objectively. And at the end of the day, my answer will be the same. Sounds interesting. We should stop sending them money. To anyone that thinks that I am a Zionist, because my position is I don't give a shit to look into the 1,000-year conflict between Jews and Muslims in the Middle East. I'm sorry. That's my take. Now, I'll focus a little more. No one's going to like my take. No one. There might be some that like my take, but there will be people, again, my friend Casimir, perhaps my friend Aircraft Sparky, they're probably not going to like that take because they're going to say, Rob, actually Israel's not as bad as Hamas and Palestine. then there will be people watching that say, Rob, how could you not condemn Israel in the heart? I get that. All I could do is be myself and talk about the issues I'm concerned with. I'm not sitting here bullshitting you that I'm some foreign policy expert. Same with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Ironically, many of the people that call themselves foreign policy experts, when I debate them on some of these issues, such as Russia-Ukraine, merely scratching the surface shows that actually they're not experts at all. Doesn't mean that I'm an expert because I'm able to prove how full of shit they are. Just proves that they weren't the experts they claim to be. You will not hear me on any of these foreign policy issues claim to be an expert. Yeah, there's Sparky agrees with me. Now, what I find surreal is I don't understand the... I've said this, if you're a big Palestine supporter, in particular, and you completely say you're copping out, you're a coward, you won't condemn Israel, blah, 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 why do you give a shit? If I was elected authoritarian ruler today, want to know what the first thing I would do is? Stop giving all these countries foreign aid, including Israel. Immediately. Done. Zero. Why do you give a shit what my motivation is at that point? You can't just take the win? It's not enough that you're doing the exact policy that we want. You have to do it for the exact reason that I say you should do it. Thank you so much, Deep South, for the follow. What's it matter? And that's sort of what I told Liam, both before, during, and after the show. You've already got me, and seemingly Tim, to agree with you on the most important thing. Yeah, we should stop sending this money. But now you're furious because you insist that we listen to you and agree with you as to the reasons to stop sending that money. Thank you, Long John. I appreciate it. Now let's delve deeper into what's going on Tim Pool's show, right? First, I have nothing but nice things to say about Tim Pool and his entire team. They were incredibly generous to me. I was not supposed to be on the show that we're talking about, the Timcast IRL. I was supposed to be on the Culture War, which was the morning show, which went swimmingly. We talked about the topics that I liked more on that show. So if you haven't seen that, go to Tenet Media. If someone could generously, I would do it, but if you're tuning in for the first time, unfortunately, I'm not at my home office. I'm off the clock at work, and the computer I have here is prone to overheating, so I hesitate to bring up videos and what have. But if someone could find the Tenet Media, thank you, Deep South, I really appreciate that. If someone could find the Tenet Media episode of Culture War and just put a link to it with me and Benjamin Weingarten, I think it was a tremendous episode. We talked more about issues of corruption, things of that nature. I will give you, without divulging any behind-the-scenes talk that could be considered private, which there was basically none, but still, I'm careful. When you're talking to people behind the scenes, I think there's a implicit agreement that you're not, this is exactly what we talked about on, when you're streaming for the public to hear. But there was nothing crazy. I'm just saying. I'm not going to sit here, and it's not like I took notes and was like, it's 7:17, Liam, Tim, and I talked about this before we were on air. It's not like that. But I'll give you just generalities. Thank you so much, Go Rams and Tree of Liberty. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's sort of off the record stuff. But again, it was nothing nefarious or anything. But I wasn't supposed to be on Timcast IRL, right? After doing the Culture War show, we hung out, played a little poker, had some lunch. I was about to head home. Tim and his team asked if I'd like to stay around for the night show. Sure, of course. More eyeballs on me? Great, that's why I was there. Now, full disclosure, if it was up to me, I told my audience, and I told people like my friend Aftershock privately on the phone, the one topic I didn't want to talk about when I looked up Benjamin Weingarten was Israel-Palestine, because just from looking at some of the stuff he posted, he seemed like he was tremendously on the side of Israel and probably wanted to continue to give aid to Israel. And because that's a topic that I find boring, because for me, I think that I'm consistent in saying stop funding Ukraine, stop funding Israel, I didn't want to spend my time talking about that when my central focus is talking about issues of corruption, particularly back home. But I would have talked about it, and I would have given my honest opinion. That's all I could do. I was pleasantly surprised that that did not come up. Now, the original idea for the Culture War show was it's supposed to be a debate show. And so we tried to find someone on the left to debate me, but unfortunately people's schedules didn't work out. And so it ended up being a show where we had sort of three people that were in agreement, me, Benjamin, and Tim. And the show was fine. I had a lot of fun. So now I'm invited to do the evening show, which has a bigger audience. And one of the things I told myself in my head was, I was a last-minute addition. There's already a guest. I had no idea who that guest was. But there is a guest that's coming on who, just like me, probably wanted to talk about some issues that he told the producers. That's what I did. The producers asked me, what do you want to talk about? I said, like, issues of corruption. It happened to fit in because the Fannie Willis decision from the judge had just came down. So it really fit in with a local news story. So I assumed it was the same with this person, and it would not be right of me to be like, no, we're not talking about that shit. We're gonna do what I want to do. It's not my show. It's Tim's show. The other guy was the guest that had planned and came in for it. I was someone who was more than happy to be there as a last-minute addition. So that's step one. Number two is I talked to Liam quite a bit before the show, and I was upfront with him. I said, I'm not going to agree with you on everything Israel-Palestine. However, if you're a supporter of Palestine, or you're more accurately, in Liam's case, critical of Israel, I think you'll enjoy my final take, which is we shouldn't be sending them money. Which he did. And then we talked about specific things. We talked about the USS Liberty, and sort of, if you're unfamiliar with that, you could look that up. We talked about some things that were in the news, and I even specifically told him, a lot of the stuff I was talking about, I said, I haven't done enough research to confirm this to where I'd feel comfortable talking about it on camera, because oftentimes what will happen is you'll read like a headline of a story on somewhere like X, but you should really hesitate to talk about it unless you at least do a little bit of research. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but that's usually how I feel. I read stuff all the time that I don't talk about on air because if it's just blatantly garbage, you look like a fool. If it's like, well, a 10-second look would have shown that wasn't true. Again, not saying I've never done it, but that's what I told Liam, and I was like, hey, here's some things to look into. Particularly, one of the things I told him to look into was I had seen people posting that allegedly Secretary Blinken got a call from the government of Qatar like a week after October 7th, after the attack, and basically the government of Qatar was like, we have some of the leaders of Hamas here, we'll extradite them, and allegedly Blinken said no. Now, if that's true, that's a huge deal, because that sort of goes right in with what Liam's saying, that the United States government and Israel aren't really interested in taking out the head of Hamas, they're actually interested in the war itself. And so that would go to, so I said, I'm not going to say it because I haven't looked into it, but hey, Liam, maybe that's something you'd like to look into. He says, sure. We get on the set. Tim and Liam are butting heads a little before the show. No big deal. You know, I'll be honest, some of the topics, again, let me say this clearly. It's Tim's show. Tim can talk about whatever he wants. I'm a last-minute addition. In no way, shape, or form are Tim or any of the other guests or the producers obligated to tailor things to my liking. So, for example, I didn't have much to say on the topic about Boeing jets. I didn't have much to say on the topic of an inner monologue. That's okay. If I don't have much to say, I tried to put a little input in where I thought it was relevant, and that was it. Then we got to Israel-Palestine. It was evident to me that there was going to be a big fight about it. Now again, it's Tim's show. Tim is a phenomenal person who was incredibly generous to me, who was nice behind the scenes, little braggadocious at poker, but no big deal. Just felt like because I got my ass kicked 2 hands in a row by him, lost all my money. But that was fun. It was a good time. Let me get a drink here. But Tim and Liam start talking about Israel, and all I could do is give my honest opinions about it. My honest opinion is, I wouldn't have handled it the same way that Tim did. That's my honest opinion. Does that mean Tim's a monster? No. Does that mean Tim's a Zionist shill? No. My guess is, based on what Tim was saying, and listen, I watch Tim's show occasionally. I cannot claim to have seen every episode. I do not know what Tim's interactions are like in the comment section of his videos, or interactions he's had on other social media platforms, or talking to people in real life. I don't know. My guess is he too is tired of it. I know what happened when Kanye came on, And so maybe he's in the position where he thinks like there are people so obsessed with Israel that want to say Jews control the world and Jews do everything that's evil. And every bad thing you could point to that's ever occurred in this country or any other country in the world is because of Jewish people. And Tim's probably fed up with that narrative and it's just like, what do you want me to say? I already said I don't want to fund Israel. And everybody's just like, nope, we got to talk. It's, the way I said this to a friend of mine, let's be frank, earlier, I was like, I could do a show, a 24-hour show, and for 23 hours, I could sit here and outline crimes of Israel. And then on the 24th hour, I could move on to another topic, and I would be inundated with people messaging me saying, Zionist shill, you refuse to condemn Israel in that 24th hour. That's how ridiculous some people are. Not everyone, but that's how ridiculous some are. So maybe Tim felt frustrated based on that. Casimir says, Liam didn't talk, he was a propagandist, and Tim noticed. Perhaps that would be your perspective, but I think that he should have left him make his point more succinctly, and then rebutted it in a way that was more... what's the word I'm looking for? More coherent to a general audience. So, here I am then, and I have this, and I'm just going to be fully honest with you. And you could say, that Rob's a coward. He's implicitly saying he's a coward. I'll tell you exactly what's going through my head. After about 10 minutes of this Israel conflict argument that's going on, it becomes evident to me that both Liam and Tim are not going to budge, and they're both going to talk over me if I try to talk, which again, it's Tim's show, and Liam was the invited guest, so I don't begrudge them that. That's not what I'm saying. But for purely selfish reasons, and I guess not purely, for selfish reasons first and foremost, but also because I thought we were spinning our wheels. I didn't think new information was coming out. I thought that basically they agreed on the majority position, which was, what should we do about this? Stop funding Israel. They both agree on that. I agree with that. Okay, great. And so now we just have this argument, which I felt like neither side was really advancing the argument. It seemed like both sides were dug in. So I say to myself, I'm not going to get to talk anymore. I have this opportunity as a guy who's normally streaming to maybe, if I'm lucky, 100 people, to be in front of 40,000 people. And I'm going to sit here silently for an hour and a half because I can't get a word in because two people are talking about this issue. And so in my head, I'm like, I'd like to move past this. And the best way, what is the most effective way to move past this? And I made the decision that although I thought I could address my comments to either side, that addressing them to Tim seemed like it would only make the topic stay the same for longer. So I thought that by addressing Liam and talking about what we had talked about before the show, that even though I don't agree with him that Israel's totally wrong and Palestine's totally right, though that's not necessarily his position, but in general, that we did agree to the non-funding, which is good. That's the direction I went. And for that, I am called a coward. And I'm called a Zionist. Had an issue came up that I was, for example, had I started talking about how I thought there was a coup against Donald Trump by our FBI, right? And I started talking about Russiagate and how they illegally spied. And if Tim was like, nah, that's bullshit. That's wrong. That's just a bullshit conspiracy. I would have went back and forth. I wouldn't have screamed, but I would have been like, I just think you're fucking completely wrong, Tim. I would have went back and forth. But what's my obligation? The one issue that I literally told my audience for years that I hate talking about, that I didn't want to talk about in the show. That's the hill I'm gonna die on. Now, Tim, shut your mouth. It's Tim's show. He can talk about what he wants. Again, if it was an issue I was passionate about and I disagreed, I would say it. I thought, I'm looking at that at the end of the day. I'm happy with Liam because he says we should stop funding these wars. I'm happy with Tim. He says we should stop funding these wars. Why am I trying to fight with him? That's how I felt. Thank you, One Truth Media Company. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I thought I handled it well, too. Now, can I see if you're someone who focuses heavily on disliking the Zionist, how you could say, I think Tim's a Zionist shill, and I think his buddy Rob's a Zionist shill, too. Yeah, I could see, I guess, if that's your preconceived notion going into that, how you would come to that conclusion. Or maybe you would say, oh, Rob's afraid to disagree with Tim about stuff. I guess I could see how maybe you would come across. All I could do is tell you what my rationale was going in. Yeah, I know Tim would have agreed with me with the FBI, but I'm just saying, if it was an issue that I focus on, I would disagree. I don't have a problem with it. But was I supposed to argue just for the sake of arguing? Was that the idea? And the truth is, as I told Liam, sometimes people can't take yes for an answer. And I even mentioned one of the things Liam said that I heavily disagreed, and I told him, was the idea that so many of these pro-Palestinian protesters are moving the movement forward. They're getting more people to agree with them. That's not true. They're harming their cause. You could probably convince an awful lot of people, hey, we should stop funding all these wars. You could probably even convince an awful lot of people Israel's going too far. But when you're blocking the road and slashing up paintings and stopping speakers on college campuses, people get tired of that shit. You look like petulant children. You might agree in your cause, but you ain't helping it. Yes, thank you, King Barnaduke. It was sort of, Liam, ironically, it was sort of a semantical argument. And I want to make this clear. I liked Liam. I thought he was making points. I know Casimir disagrees, but I thought he was. I thought that once he gets some more self-confidence, I think he'll be better, but I thought he did fine. I liked him. I would have handled it slightly differently than Tim, but I don't know how many times Tim's dealt with the same argument. Certainly, I'm irrational when people make the same argument over and over to me. Look how many times my friend Aftershock I've given shit in chat. Because I'll be like, dude, I already fucking answered this. So I'm not perfect. Tim's not perfect. None of us are. Let's see. Yeah, Jay, I'll hook up with you later, man. And I see this all the time, though. Like, imagine, like, take an issue that I believe in, right? Let's say I'm against government censorship. I'm against it. And then let's say some lefty comes on and goes, you know what pisses me off? Government censorship. We should end all of it. And he says, the reason I believe that is because I feel the government censored the Young Turks, and they have a right to a voice. Now, I don't like the Young Turks. I also don't believe the government censored the Young Turks. But I'd be like, welcome aboard. More than happy to have you on my side in this issue to stop government censorship. I think your reasoning's a little off, but hey, goodbye me. Did I get feedback from the Timcast folks? Did they like his contributions? Meaning his is in Liam's or in Tim's? All I got was feedback on my performance, and they seemed to like me. So, I don't know. Yeah, Sparky. That's what I wanted to talk about tonight. So, yeah, Chuck, thanks, Roar89. But yeah, there were certainly people on Liam's side in the comments. There were a lot of people that didn't appreciate the way Tim handled it. There were a lot of people that didn't appreciate Liam and thought that the way Tim handled it was perfectly acceptable. There were some people that said, I don't really like what Liam said, but I thought Tim could have been more hospitable to him as a guest. So I don't know what to say. Like, it's just, it sort of goes to what Tim was saying on the show, where it's like, you'll be like, yeah, okay, we should stop funding Israel. And they're like, that's not good enough. You now need to spend every waking moment talking about how Israel's the great Satan. Only then. Why? And I thought I made my case last night quite well. The problem is, once you start to delve in on any of these wars that we fund both sides of many times, and you start to talk about the morality of them, the problem is what you then do is implicitly make the argument that we should be defending the more moral side. So the military-industrial complex, the intel agencies, etc., they're like, yes, argue who's more correct, Israel-Palestine. Meanwhile, we'll fund both. We'll fund them both. The more principled position is to say, it is not our conflict. We should not be doing that. Our government, to the extent that it basically robs us by forcing us to pay taxes, if that is going to be an inevitability, which it is, sorry Casimir, but if it is going to be an inevitability and should exist to a very limited extent, then the very least that could happen is that monies be invested for the people of this country, not to fund foreign wars. And I'm sorry, although I have a big heart, and I'm willing to listen to people talk about atrocities all over the world, at the end of the day, it is not the legitimate use of our government, which exists to provide for the people of this government, to interfere in these situations around the world. To the extent that you could argue that it should be the role of the world superpower to do those things, I would disagree largely, but say this, even if you believe that superpower should only act if it has people's best interest at heart and is competent. And our government is neither. They are corrupt and incompetent. It is not our problem. Well, that's true, Casimir, but it still had taxation. Thank you, Joe, for the subscription. 24 months. Thank you so much. Very generous. That's it. That's my feelings on it. But Rob, the great Satan Israel. Yeah, great, whatever. Let them handle it. They're the big boys. They'll handle it. They got beef? Leave them settle it. Let's talk about some other criticisms. The number one, well, I don't want to say number one criticism. One of the criticisms about me, here's two criticisms stylistically about me, both that are warranted. One, that I sound like I'm about to cry, or I sound like Snot from American Dad. The same actor was Booger in Revenge of the Nerds. Yeah, that's true. I don't know what to say. Yes, that is how I sound. I could try to talk like this the whole time. What's up? On Normal America with robnoerr show. I don't want my voice to sound like it's not deep enough, so I'll try to talk like this the whole time. I don't know, it's how I fucking talk. I guess I could take voice lessons or something. I don't give a shit. But that's fine. I don't mind the insults. I think it's kind of funny. So that's number one. I talk too much with my hands. Yeah, I do that normally. But it was even worse on Tim's show, and I think it's because I was trying to moderate my tone, and I was also very tired. So maybe that's annoying. I don't know, maybe it comes off as pretentious. It is not my intention, but I don't know. I am a hand talker, though. But that's a fair criticism. Okay. There, I did it again. See what I mean? That's fine. So I saw those comments. Yes, I'm balding. Yes, my primary reason to start wearing a hat was because I was balding. Though not like this. This is fine. I could do this without the hat. The problem is, I'll tell you, this looks fine. Doesn't bother me at all. I know I'm balding. However, once I don't get a haircut for like 2 or 3 weeks, and it starts to get a little longer on the side and stays thin up top, then it looks like hell. So that's why I started wearing the hat. But yes, true. You got me. That's absolutely true. Okay. Someone said, inconceivable, that's what you want me to say, yeah. Someone said that I sound like a whiner. I guess that's more to the voice modulation thing, okay. How about I sound like a know-it-all? I don't know exactly what a know-it-all sounds like, but maybe that's true, or I sound like a know-it-all. I hope that I sound confident, because I am, so, okay. But I don't know what else to say about that. What else do we have? The criticism of it's not just about who's more morally culpable in the conflict today. It's more about the fact that Israel's such a strong lobby. Okay, that's a sort of a separate issue, though obviously connected. So let's talk about that for a second. Yes, I have said on my channel for years that I find Israel has far too much influence on our domestic policies. That, for example, I've defended Ilhan Omar, who I have no love for, when she said it's all about the Benjamins. And Ben Shapiro and them said, this is clearly an anti-Semitic trope. I said, bullshit. Maybe she just... It's very likely that Ilhan Omar's an anti-Semite. That could be true. But I think you could absolutely criticize Israel's spending on lobbying in the United States and not have that be anti-Semitic. Totally agree. In fact, I would agree. When Tim's bringing up other countries, I think over the past decade, Israel, their lobbying influences have been far more expansive than many of the other countries. I believe that's changed with Ukraine, particularly since probably 2014 through 16 up until now. But I do think it's accurate to say Israel probably has a ton of politicians in the United States on their side. What I will say, though, is people go way too far. Israel controls everything. No, they don't. There are tons of outside influences on our government. For example, China massively influences not just our politics, but our culture. For example, the amount of money that China puts into U.S. academics is insane. The people that want to say Israel's at fault for everything ignore this. They also ignore the fact that there's an awful lot of institutions that aren't government institutions that unduly affect our politics, such as corporations, many of which are globalist and do not have the interests of the American people at heart. Is it perfectly true and reasonable to talk about Israel being a lobbyist that has undue influence on our country? Yes! And I've done it many times. Is it fair to say that perhaps they have more than their demographically average numbers would suggest influence on our culture? Sure. Okay, yeah. That's true. I've talked about this. Thank you, Sandy from the Burbs. I appreciate it. I've talked about this, right? Like, for example, it was hard for me to get fired up for a bunch of Jewish people. And this isn't the government of Israel. I'm just talking Jewish people, and not all Jewish people, who has donated millions of dollars to Ivy League schools in this country, all of a sudden be upset to find out that there were many professors and students at these schools that view Israel as oppressors, and were saying things that they argued were potentially genocidal rhetoric. And one of the things I said was, where were you when it was white people? Or when it was Christians? Or when it was men? That was okay. And I said, not all Jewish people, I'm not saying that, but what I said, and I talked about this many times on the show, was that many of these people who were Jewish and were heavily investing in these universities were more than happy to play the cultural Marxist game of oppressor versus oppressed. The only difference is they say, we're the oppressed. We as Jewish people are oppressed. So they'd point to Christians or white people and say, oppressor! And they'd treat them like shit, or be okay with the treating of shit of those groups. And then all these other groups said, yes! And by the way, Jews are there. They're the oppressors as well. And then all of a sudden these Jewish people said, no. They're not decrying the system. The ones you saw that were speaking, we're going to pull our endowments out of Harvard. It's not that they don't like that system of labeling people oppressor versus oppressed. They just want to get the victimhood points, the oppressed. That's it. Is that all Jewish people? No. Is that exclusive to the government of Israel? No. But that's true. And I've talked about it. Was I obligated in my appearance on Tim Pool's show to try, when I couldn't get a word in edgewise, to shoehorn that in? And if you go back and you watch the show, I'm telling you, even as verbose as I am and insistent as I am as get speaking time when I'm on platforms, it was insanely difficult. I constantly was trying to interject and was just being drowned out by both Tim and Liam. Which again is perfectly fine, seeing as how it's Tim's show and Liam was the original invited guest. So I'm not complaining. I'm not saying shame on Tim and Liam. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to those who say, but you should have spoke up more and said X, and because you didn't, you're a coward. What did you want me to do? Now I understand David Icke may be upset about this because he may think that it makes me seem like a Zionist or pro-Israel, or I'm lying about being informed, which I literally start off every conversation on Israel-Palestine or on Ukraine-Russia saying, I'm not an expert. I'm an average redneck. That's who I am. I'm sorry that I'm not as sophisticated as an intellectual as David Icke, who somehow found out that the entire royal family are lizard people aliens. That's a level of intelligence in the official academic circles that I've been unable to achieve. So, maybe we should only allow people in this conversation that are fully aware of the lizard, quite literally lizard people aliens that are running things. Perhaps only they should be allowed to speak, correct, David? So, apologies for that. Now, a good friend of mine, Richie, is about to call in. He's in the room. I like Richie a lot. Maybe he's going to blow me up and tell me I'm a piece of shit for my performance on Tim. And if he does, that's okay, because Richie's awesome and I don't mind. But before I get to Richie here, I do have to say this. Where are all the tough guys that called me cowards who I sent DMs today that they were going to call into the show tonight? Where are you? Because that's why I'm doing this show that I didn't want to do, talking once more about my appearance on Tim Pool. Because people said I was a Zionist and I was a coward. So now they have their chance to call in. And where are they? And I knew this shit would happen. You can call in and yell at me. I'm not going to interrupt. I'll let you go, within reason, obviously. Where are they? Big talkers anonymously on X. Where are they now? And they'll be right there tomorrow. Oh, did you see this guy with the hat on Tim Pool's show? He's a coward. He's a Zionist. Okay. Maybe some will call in later. I don't know. Yeah, aircraft could call in and call me a coward. Now listen, I want them to call in. I'm not going to treat them like shit. I'll let them say their piece. What's up, Abago? I will. In fact, I'm going to